and welcome to another live author interview brought to you by Booktrib, the leading source for book news and reviews. My name is Chelsea Ciccone. I'm an editor at Booktrib, and today I'm joined by Steve Melen, whose memoir, Killer Graces, explores his journey through a very grim cancer diagnosis and addiction, and later leaving him to a life of what he calls breakthrough living. So welcome, Steve. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on Booktrib to start this holiday weekend off.
Yeah, what a great way to start off the weekend. So I guess let's just we'll jump into the sort of the start of your memoir, and that is finding out that you have stage 3B stomach cancer, which you sort of notably say in the book that, you knew that stage 4 was bad.
Right.
So stage 3, but this particular type of cancer comes with a very, grim outlook, a 15% chance of survival. And your life at the time was going pretty well, successful career, married, you just had a daughter. So can you tell me about receiving this diagnosis and, what sort of led you to, what I imagine is one of the most overwhelming experiences someone can go through?
Yes, well, it was actually about, I think it might've been 13 years to the day that I actually got the diagnosis, because it was January of 2008, and it was somewhere between these 3 days. And because I remember this because it was 2 weeks before my 38th birthday. And when I got the diagnosis on this day, I had gone to the emergency room after several other primary care doctor visits that they thought it was stress, anxiety, or just reflux. And it was misdiagnosed basically because they didn't believe someone at my age would have such a severe cancer. So when the emergency room that morning found out, they did a test for anemia. My blood work was low. They ended up going to doing a scan. They saw something. And then the scan went to an endoscopy. The endoscopy said they definitely see something. And then they said, you have cancer. And I said, what kind of cancer? And they said, might be pancreatic because your pancreas is swollen. So it was very unknown. And I had no idea about any of this stuff. So in the next 2 weeks, they said, you need to have your stomach removed. And they had scheduled it for my 30th birthday. And I said, no, I don't want it on that day because I don't want my death day and birthday to be the same day. So that was all 13 years ago. Wow.
Well, you're still here, so thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
You've definitely, you've come a long way. But aside from this initial diagnosis, your journey continues, and it gets a little bit more grim, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, before it gets better. But your prescription medication for your pain, dealing with, so well, I guess before we get to that, can you talk about the sort of radically different medical advice you're given once you're correctly diagnosed? A little bit extreme. You do not have a stomach.
Right, yes. So I went to 3 different doctors to get different opinions, and each day, and this is all within a week, were sort of different protocols. So I was confused at really which direction I should take. I felt like I was taking the door for my life and I might be making the wrong decision. So I ended up going with Stanford just because Stanford Hospital and Stanford School was a great school. My father got his master's and PhD there, but I could never get into Stanford. So I thought, this is my way into Stanford. I'm going to go right through the hospital doors to get in. So I just felt confident that I was at a good institution. And so when I go in for the surgery, I was signing the paperwork and they said, all right, we're going to take your stomach out, your spleen, and probably part of your pancreas. And I said, don't I need those things? I don't even know what the spleen does. And, I didn't even know at the time. So so that's what ended up happening is they spleen, half the pancreas, a third of my esophagus, all my stomach was taken out. And I came out of this first surgery And fairly quickly they had to code blue me and knock me back out and reopen me up because I was leaking from the inside. So I spent the next week sedated and on a breathing tube. And when I came out of that, I was strapped to the bed. I couldn't move my legs. I had a 24-hour nurse next to me. So that week was in and out of consciousness, and I was in the ICU, and I was hallucinating, and I had lots of wild visions. But once I came out of that, for the next 3 weeks in the hospital, I started to recover. But the problem with being in the hospital so long and being in such pain from all of this stuff is they continue to give you lots of pain meds, and I was on a pain pump and pain pills and pain teams that were helping me out. So I left the hospital with fixed with this immediate problem. I then created a new problem from the pain meds that was taking high doses of those. And then I had to go through chemo and radiation following that. So it was just getting punched left and right.
Yeah. And that's a lot to put your body through. That's wow. So, you talk about the fact that you've been pumped with a lot of pain medication. You're now going on to further treatment. You've been prescribed medication. And this is sort of, it's interesting as reading a memoir, you see the writing on the wall, these little clues that you drop in. And of course, at the time, hindsight is, as they say, 2020. At the time, this isn't something that you're thinking about. And I'm not too versed on, the opioid epidemic, but these medications were prescribed for you. And I think you, like a lot of other individuals that have experienced addiction to and these medications and dependency on them, were thinking that, my doctor gave them to me. My doctor knows what's best. So, can you talk about confronting the idea that perhaps you are addicted to these?
Yeah, I didn't know the severity and how much these pills actually get into your system and how they really take over. Because after a year of these, I was convinced that I needed them. And I could have passed a lie detector test. And I said, no, but the quantity was going up and up and up. And not until I finally got to a point, I started on a plan with my doctor, my primary care physician, to wean down. And that weaning down was so hard, I started to get more sick. It was like a bad flu. And I just didn't know if I just thought I really needed these pills because they were really saving me. I had physical pain, and it's what they call chronic pain. And so I believed it. And then when I decided, well, I actually didn't decide, I ran out of pills much earlier than I was allowed to get refilled. So I called the doctor to refill, and they said, nope, it's too early. And I said, I was in a panic. And so then finally I just stopped taking them. And that was a mistake because I was taking, if anyone understands, I was taking 20 Oxycontins a day, 20 milligrams. So that's enough to kill a horse, right? So I was taking a lot of pills, and I was 95 pounds. I had lost a lot of weight from the surgery and from the chemo and the radiation. And felt like I was dying. And that was the only thing that was giving me any relief at all. Everything else just seemed like it was a cycle of waking up in pain, going through pain, and then can't wait to go to bed at night. Well, I got off the pain meds, and within 72 hours, I was getting wheeled into the emergency room because I thought for sure I was dying. And my pulse was down. I was sick, violently sick. So I go in there, and I had a choice, and they did every test possible, and they ended up finding out that nothing seemed to be off, and they asked me if I wanted a shot of Dilaudid, and I said yes, and my ex-wife said don't do it, and that was it. So I got the shot, and I was able to stand up and walk out of there, and that's when I realized that I have a problem with the pills and with the medication. They really had a hold of me, that if I could get that better that fast with one shot, I'm a total addict, and I didn't know it. So, but I proceeded then to start to detox over the next month. And once I got through that, I gained 25 pounds in the next month to get me up to 6'1" and 125 or 120, and which was, I'm already on the lighter side, but I was so happy to get that energy back and get that mobility back in my intestines.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so, you get through over this, seemingly get through over this one hurdle, but we're still not done. Um, we're now going to have problems with alcohol abuse. So can you talk about that, kind of moving into that next stage?
Yes, once I got off the pain meds and I started to gain some weight and get back to what I thought was normal, I figured, let's start doing what I was doing before. I could go I had a wine cellar at my house, but I could go pour a glass of wine, I could have with dinner and with friends and parties, and go back to what I was doing before. Because I didn't drink alcohol for a year while I was going through this. And I didn't need it because the pain meds just handled everything. Now, going back to having wine, it started out okay at first, and then it turned, the couple sips turned into glass, turned into bottle. It just was self-medicating in a different form. And I lost control of that then too. And then I realized that something had changed in that whole process, in my wiring, my chemical, I don't know what it was, but I now was numbing with whatever I could because I was so afraid of dying. I was so afraid of how terrible my life was. And I just wasn't a father. I wasn't a husband. I wasn't a man. I was just losing all of that. And I just was sad, really, what it came down to.
Yeah.
So alcohol became a problem too, until I checked myself in to rehab twice, but the second time worked 7 years ago.
So, you mentioned, the fact that you didn't feel like a father and, a husband, knowing that this is a problem, but, this is a way to, I guess, cope, not the way you would hope you'd cope, but you were. But I think one of the most compelling parts of your book is your love for your daughter. Family is something I think most people can relate to and get behind. And she's a real source of motivation for you to keep going. There's a moment later on in the book where she asks you, I don't know how old she is, but she asks you why, you don't play with her. And she says you always have a headache. And you then sort of say that, that was, I think, a moment of realization that she's seeing a lot more of your behavior and your patterns than you would have assumed she would have. And I'm wondering, what is it like to experience, cancer recovery, going through addiction, while also being a parent? Because, being a parent in and of itself is, difficult. And now you've added these things on top. So what is it like to experience that?
Well, this is the emotional part for me, like talking about this and reliving this a lot, because I will say that having children isn't the easiest thing always to have. And when we had our daughter, it was just a wonderful blessing. And from the day she was born, I was already thinking about the day she walked down the aisle to get married. So I was thinking way forward. So when I got sick and she was only 1 year old, 1.5 years old, I felt that she may never remember me. And so my first goal, because I don't have many people, we don't solidify our memories until we're 5, 6, 7 years old. And a lot of things we just don't remember. And my biggest fear at first was that she would not remember who I was and she would be walking down the aisle alone. That was the first thing that I thought about. And my friend, who was my anesthesiologist for my second surgery, told me, he said, you have to write a letter to your daughter. And you have to write it down and what she means to you, because, this is a really tough thing you're going to be going through right now. And I never did it. I never wrote that letter that he told me to do because I didn't want to give up. I didn't want to even have that. I mean, there was a high probability that I wasn't going to make it, but she was this inspiration that I wanted to first get to the point where she at least remembered me. So I wouldn't have been just from pictures or from videos or just these memories. Oh God, it just gets to me still. And then once I got to that part, when she was 6 or 7, she was seeing me and just getting to the part where she was seeing and understanding this alcohol and drinking and the headache thing that I was having. So I felt that, gosh, I can't kill myself with this stuff. Now that I've made it this far, I've got to continue living. So I'm going to do what I can to make sure I still have ability to see my daughter. So what is it that I need to do? I need to stop it. I can't stop drinking and I can't not drink. So I got to do something drastic. So that's when I went through all the steps that I had to do, check myself into a rehab, lived then for 6 months in a sober living house, a month, a month away from her and from rehab, 6 months living somewhere else in another house and coming up with these, oh, dad's just on trips or dad's doing this. She was young enough to where she really didn't know, but she was old enough to kind of go, oh, where's dad? And that was a hard time, but I think I handled it early enough to where it's not scarring for her. And right now we have the best relationship ever. It's awesome. I love it.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Your story, while you're reading it, you're rooting for you to make those changes, because you can tell how much love you have for her, and that you want to get better. And so it's and then it's rewarding in the end, obviously, because you did, and you've come out the other side, and like you've just said, have a great relationship with her now. But so now that we're on the other side of this, you talk later about ways in which you're sort of giving back to these various communities. You work with Debbie's Dream Foundation. It's a prep mentor for people. Can you talk about that work that you do?
Yeah, so I started off working with another cancer foundation initially, and helped start that one years ago, early on. And then I made a changeover. I found Debbie's Dream Foundation, and it just fit really well with what I was doing and what I want to do as far as the patient advocacy and helping other patients who are newly diagnosed and feeling fear and uncertainty. So I became a prep mentor for them, and then subsequently joined the board. And now what I do is I head to Capitol Hill every year, and we go on Capitol Hill to do Advocacy Day, where we all meet, and I meet Senate and Congress members. And I was just looking at pictures of last year, and I was in Pelosi's office, and I was on Capitol Hill, and it was like all of us with our cancer. It was about 100 of us, and I was one of the longest survivors that was there, going to meet with all these Senate and Congress members. And it was like we stormed the Capitol, and I was going, God, how crazy that we were there, like just doing this really wonderful thing. And now, now we've got all this stuff going on now, but we now have to do this year, we have to do it virtually. We can't go there. But that is one of the things that I do, is we get funding for certain cancers and help stomach cancer. And I am part of Debbie's Dream Foundation, and been doing a lot of work, having charity events and going to DC and just trying to make a bigger impact. And I do it one-on-one with individuals, with phone calls and Zoom calls, to give them a little bit of extra hope, knowing that they can get through those phases. I'm kind of like the old survivor now. I don't feel like I'm that old, but when you look at me in the group that I'm in, I actually have quite a bit of survival. So they can't necessarily relate. Like, they look at me and go, you're great, everything's great. But once you read my story, you go, oh my God, he went through, a pretty tough time. So that's what I'm there to pass. That's what this book is helping. It's helping to spread the message that these tough times can pass. And that's why I'm just trying to get to a bigger audience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this book is definitely going to reach, I think, many, many more people than just in your own community. And another thing that I think I found particularly compelling, as someone that hasn't experienced the same things that you have, is your approach to issues in your life. You say that you look at them as challenges rather than problems. And as someone who is always saying that words are so important, I found this Wonderful. So can you talk about this approach to navigating life?
Yeah, problems always seem so negative, and it just seems like such a negative. And when you add problems into your life, it just blocks you from that energy. Just becomes a really negative thing. And I thought that challenges are, you can achieve and get past these challenges, or obstacles. You can call them those as well. I have a lot of obstacles. All right. I've had a lot. I mean, even 2 days ago, I had a iron infusion that went awry, and I almost passed out in the middle of it. Right. And my blood pressure dropped, and I thought I was just going in for a positive thing to help my body that I needed. And you know what? It was very hard. And I left there going, oh my gosh, it was not what I planned. It wasn't a problem. It was an obstacle or a challenge for that day. And I think that if you we can overcome these things, the challenges. We all have challenges every day. And those challenges can be really small. Sometimes my challenges were getting out of bed. That was a challenge, just getting up. And then it got to be getting up my stairs. And then it was going for a walk. And then it was eating. And those challenges were big to me at the time. And so when I see everyone else out there and they have their issues, I mean, they say, I got so many problems going on in my life. And I say, I think you can get through them. You can, just look at them as another obstacle that you can get over. And that's how I look. Now, I don't always live this advice, okay? Because I do have anxiety about things and I do stress out, but I've at least moved more toward thinking about that beforehand and knowing that I'm not going to die from this particular event, when before I might have thought, oh my God, this is it. I'm not going to make it. I can make it through pretty much anything. And my friends, even this morning, they called me up and they just said, you know what, we thought you were going to be the first one of us gone. You're going to be the last one of us here now. Because I'm probably going to live to be 100 now. And I was potentially supposed to die at 38 or before 40. So I'm very grateful, and that's kind of that energy is what I'm trying to pass and share with people through the book, and just through things like Booktrib. I think it's a wonderful opportunity that you even have this up.
Well, I mean, that is really an excellent attitude to have. Do you think it comes from just your experiences alone? Does it come from the recovery? I mean, I see a lot of overlap with things like the Serenity Prayer.
Right. I think what I really am is, I was a little kid who was adopted and given off to another family, and it was not necessarily a planned adoption. It was just, so at 1-2 years old, I had a very mixed up beginning. So I've been this little child all along, wanting to be liked and helped and get through and just navigate through life. And those early things weren't in my control. Now what's in my control, I want to be as positive and as good and move forward as I can. I keep on getting hit left and right. It's just like constantly with things, but I seem to be getting through them, and I look back and I go, if I worried as much as I used to about those things, it might've been a lot harder to get through these things that I did. So I think that, I want people to try to focus on the present and getting through these things. And if you think about your past, it brings anxiety and stress, and, and the future is stressful too. You don't want to be depressed or stressed, but not to say that I don't feel those emotions. I felt like giving up a lot. And, I've had these things that have just popped up. My daughter and my wife now, I'm remarried, and and my stepson, those things have really given me day-to-day motivation. My clients, my friends, I've got a lot of positive energies around me. So I'm very lucky.
That's absolutely wonderful. So, I mean, we're coming up on time. So I guess I'll sort of ask, is there any other advice that you have? I mean, you've talked about, spreading this kind of approach to life, this positive message, but do you have any other advice for people who are going through the same things that you are, or people facing similarly challenging things going on in their lives?
You know, everyone's level of, at first when I would hear people complain about things and tell me, I mean, literally it would be about my cat has a fur ball in their throat and you don't know how terrible this is. And I'd be lying in bed with not able to get out, and I would be angry at first. But now everyone has something going on. Everyone has their story. And everyone, and a lot of people are trying to put on this this persona that everything is great. I'm fine. I'm fine. But you know what? It's okay to not be fine all the time. It's okay. Now, it's not, I don't think it's okay to constantly complain about everything all the time. But I do think that it's okay to reach out to people that you trust and friends and family and say, you know what? It's not perfect today. I'm having a tough time. And that you won't believe how much that can help you just get through the day at that point. So don't be afraid to admit that you don't have it all. I mean, I don't. I feel like I'm at the happiest point I've ever been in my entire life. I'm 50 years old. I'll be 51 in 2 weeks. And I never thought that I would reach this level of happiness. My wife loves me. My daughter and I have a great relationship and stepson. And I didn't see this coming. And so to have it now is quite amazing. I think it's just a combination of my biology and these experiences, and then what I've absorbed from other people, and these opportunities like this right now. I'm communicating it, and I just love to be able to do this.
That's excellent. Well, I wish you all the best. I think your message is really positive, and I think it's one that everyone can benefit from. And I'm looking forward to seeing how you get to do that in the future, and hopefully maybe we can speak again. But your book, Killer Graces, is available. We have a link in our comment section. What an excellent, inspiring story. Thank you so much, Steve, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Have a great weekend, everybody.